The Lotus 87 was introduced in 1980 as an effort to get back to the head of the pack with a car of more conventional design. Lotus had gone up some blind alleys since the mid-70s in trying to exploit the black art of ground effects aerodynamics. It was developed from the Lotus 81 that Martin Ogilvy had designed under the watchful eye of Colin Chapman and employed a short wheelbase aimed at decreasing understeer. Nigel Stroud turned it into the 87 by designing a new monocoque that moved the cockpit forward about 4 inches. This made the car more torsionally rigid, and the use of 15-inch wheels solved the understeer problem. Even so, a second place for Elio De Angelis in 1980's Brazilian Grand Prix was the 87's best ever result. Colin Chapman had pinned his 1981 hopes on the Lotus 88. It was intended to circumvent new rules that banned the side skirts which skimmed the track and kept the downforce-inducing vacuum under the ground effect cars. Chapman had engineered a way around this. A unique twin chassis system used wind pressure to force the 88 side pods down close to the track as its speed increased, thus regaining most of the effect of the banned skirts. The rest of the constructors were furious at Chapman exploiting this loophole. Protests were filed, the 88 was banned, and Lotus had to make do with the old 87. The Lotus 91 was the first of Colin Chapman's cars to use carbon fibre in its chassis construction. In 1982, it took Lotus back to victory lane for the first time in 4 years, when Elio De Angelis scored his debut Grand Prix win in Austria. Sadly, at the end of the year, Colin Chapman died from a heart attack. His team was already in France testing the Lotus 92 for the next season. The Lotus 92 was the last of the cars from the Norfolk factory to have any input from the company's founder. And it was also the last to use a Cosworth Ford DFV engine. At the time of Chapman's premature death, Lotus had been in discussions with Renault about the use of the French company's hugely powerful 1500cc turbocharged power unit. An agreement on this was reached for 1983. The Ford-engined 92, meanwhile, was built as a backup car in case there were problems with the installation of the turbo unit. It had been 15 years since Lotus, Cosworth and Ford had all first linked together for the winning debut of the Lotus 49 and the DFV Ford V8 in the Dutch Grand Prix. Since then, the combination had won 5 world championships together, and the Lotus 92 was the final reminder of one of the strongest and most productive partnerships in Formula One racing. It was in a Lotus Cosworth that Nigel Mansell had started his Grand Prix career, and even though he'd never won a race in the black and gold JPS livery, Nigel looks back on those days with a great deal of affection. While other British teams were using overseas drivers who could bring big budget sponsorship money into the team, Colin Chapman put his faith in a driver from Birmingham who could bring in nothing but raw talent and a huge determination to succeed. Nigel Mansell has never forgotten Chapman's faith in his abilities, and it was a powerfully emotional moment as he renewed his acquaintance with the JPS Lotus at Silverstone. Nigel loved it, and so did the fans. As always, he was the centre of attention whenever he appeared in the warm-up area. Having one of Britain's greatest drivers on hand in the mark which started him on the road to fame was a fitting way for Silverstone to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the first Formula One World Championship.